Hello, folks. It's Doug Woodward. I am so excited to bring you another episode of The Hot Seat. It has been getting hot lately, some really amazing shows. I have another amazing show for you today. I'm going to introduce you to a friend that I've known for probably 10 years, Dr. Preston Bailey. And Dr. Bailey has a specialty, not just in SRIDID, but he has a specialty in counseling with and interfacing with the Illuminati, but all in a Christian counter-revolutionary sense, if you will. So I'm going to first off ask Dr. Bailey to tell us a bit about his credentials. And he has a lot, so hopefully it won't take up too much of the program, but I'll ask you to talk about why he is an authority on these subjects and why we can trust that what he's telling us is scientifically sound. So, Dr. Bailey, welcome.
Welcome, Doug. Appreciate you inviting me to come on.
Absolutely.
I attended the largest seminary in the world that has the largest Christian counseling center in the world. And I have a doctorate of ministry degree. I've been a pastor for 47 years, and I studied dissociation at Harvard Medical School under the psychiatrist who actually invented the term dissociative identity disorder, Dr. Richard Clough.
Wow.
And I was appointed by the governor as chairman of the governor's task force on child abuse. I was also chairman of the juvenile anti-crime task force that helped decrease juvenile crime 70% in the state of Florida.
Wow. Well, that was an effective service that you provided. Great. That's terrific. Well, gosh, I knew you had great credentials, but I forgot about the Harvard one. That's pretty impressive. Well, the audience is likely familiar with the term SRIDID. If they've listened to one of the last two hot seats, they know that we've been talking about satanic ritual abuse and dissociation, but primarily with individuals that are of the nobility. And but I think what we should do first, we're going to broaden that today, but I think what we should do first is let's give folks just a little bit, maybe 5 minutes of of science on the background to dissociation. What is it? What causes it? How does it affect the brain? Things like that.
Let me go from the known to the unknown. The known is, according to the FBI, 1 in 4 females are abused as a child, and 1 in 7 males are abused as a child.
Wow.
So when you go to a church of 200 people, 100 of them are females. So that means 25 of those females have been sexually abused as a child.
Right.
Now, and 1 in 7 of those males were abused as a child. But that also means that some abusers of children are also in that church.
Yes.
Much to my horror, one church I went to, I discovered that one of the deacons had 2 grown daughters. A week before I got there as pastor, one of his grown daughters with 2 preschoolers committed suicide, so I wasn't able to help her. And then when I got there, his other daughter, it turns out she had DID and I was able to help her. So what happens is this. when you're a child, your brain cannot handle a traumatic event, like a car wreck is a traumatic event, or any kind of trauma, or it cannot handle severe abuse. Your conscious brain cannot handle it when you're 4, 5, 6, 7. Usually I've found under the age of 10. Your conscious brain cannot handle it. So what happens is a natural process that God created in the brain. It's a survival process. It is a defense mechanism. And the memory of that event automatically has a wall of amnesia that surrounds it, and it is stored in the subconscious mind so that the person does not remember it. When I was chairman of the governor's task force on child abuse, I counseled children that had been abused, and right after the event, they remember it. So I've talked to 4 and 5-year-old children who remember it. Underneath that, it's very difficult. They have a general idea, but as time progresses, and depending on the severity of the abuse, they don't remember it until about 30 years of age. What happens is when a person turns 30, they start to take life serious. When a person is a teenager up to about 30 years of age, they want to party and have fun, and life is fun. But by the time a person is 30, they want to get serious. Most people want to get married. And so there's something in the brain that says you need to resolve your childhood issues. Because I've found counseling literally thousands of people that as an adult, unresolved issues from your childhood manifest in your adult life, and especially if you're married, it tends to bring it to the surface. So the symptoms of dissociative identity disorder start to manifest. Now, dissociation simply means separation. That's all it means. So it's not a psychotic condition. It's just a separation of the abuse or trauma as a child deep into the subconscious mind. So as a person turns around 30 or even 35, then what begins to happen is they may have a flash thought of the traumatic or abusive event as a child. It lasts just for a few seconds. Then what happens is the memory, the emotions connected to a specific event begin to rise. So a person's 30 years old, they're going around their normal life, and all of a sudden an intense fear comes to the surface, and they get paranoid and they think someone's going to hurt them, and there's no logical reason at the time. That is called affect, AFFECT. Okay. And so oftentimes a person gets severely depressed, because what happens is, as a child, you're not allowed to confront your abuser. You're not allowed to say, I don't like that, because the abuser will hurt you worse. So I say, very simply, repression of emotions without expression results in depression.
Okay.
So it's important to talk about things.
Let me ask this. I've noticed, I guess just in my reading, in a few interviews, talking to a few counselors, that confirms just exactly what you're saying, that there is a point around, we'll say around 30 to 35 years of age, where I would phrase it this way, where the programming that had been done on the child wears off, and they
That's right.
begin to wake up. And so the question I've got, this shifts over a little bit into ongoing, I guess, activities in the cults. Are the cults sharp enough now to know that that's going to happen, and that they begin to touch up the programming sort of in that same time frame to try to continue to hide behind the amnesia of the well, we'll call them the survivors?
Yes, they're survivors.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them prefer different terms, but they're really survivors. And satanic ritual abuse they are survivors. It's a miracle they have survived. And there's a group going around and saying they're false memories. Well,
right.
The fact is, the trauma, the horror is the more accurate word. The horror they go through and describe in detail could not be imagined in your wildest dreams.
Right.
The horror no child could make up.
Well, especially if they're 4 years old, 5 years old, they've had no life experience that would give them any insight into that kind of activity, right?
Exactly. And the last thing I would want to do is to put any kind of memories inside of an adult.
Right.
Because, I mean, I've counseled hundreds. I've gone across America and across Canada and Germany and England, and I've trained counselors in treating dissociative identity disorder
Mm-hmm.
and SRADID. And I tell them, don't ask leading questions. You ask open-ended questions and you listen to the answer. It's impossible to put memory in there.
Right.
Well,
the false memory syndrome organization, as I recall from my research, and I've written about this, as you know, that it was actually formed by the John Gittingers and some of the people that had been involved early on in the MK Ultra program.
That's right.
Monarch and all that. So you've got you've got the fox guarding the hen house or something like that. And as I understand, of course, the DID is in the DSM diagnostics book
and statistical manual for this
right. Yes. Used to be called, I guess, ICD-9 and all that stuff. But false memory syndrome is not recognized as a legitimate mental issue at all. I'm not mistaken.
It's a political term. It's not a psychological term. It's I debated on the Maury Povich show years ago in New York. I flew to New York a week after the Twin Towers were first bombed.
Oh, back in 93. Back in 93.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I went there and I debated one of the board members of the False Memory Syndrome Society. All he did was sat there in his gray beard and said, it doesn't exist, doesn't exist. And one of the women I counseled with SRADID was sitting on the stage next to me. And she switched on stage into a child. It was obviously a 4 or 5 year old child.
Right.
And she was about 50 years old.
Yes.
And it shocked the audience.
How did Maury react to that?
Well, Maury was kind of in shock. One woman in the audience, and there was like 200 people there.
Right.
One woman in the audience. And of course, the guy from the False Memory Syndrome Society, he didn't say anything at all. Yeah. And everybody was shocked.
Good idea that he didn't.
One woman in the audience hollered, it's a demon. I took my microphone off
Okay.
I jumped off the stage. The producer said, "Don't do it. These people in the audience are crazy." That's what she said. They're crazy. She thought they'd beat me up. And I went over there and I said, I'm a pastor. I know the difference between demons and altered personalities.
Yeah.
And the woman was shocked. And
The women in the audience?
the woman in the audience. Oh, yes, yes.
Yeah.
And of course, everybody in the whole place, even those on the platform, were shocked.
Right.
And they didn't say anything, so they just went on.
Did you quickly get into a counseling session with the person that was manifesting a child?
Yeah, so then I was able to get her back to herself, and I spoke to the camera and I said this. I said, almost every counselor that's listening to this broadcast knows exactly what I'm saying is the truth.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Now,
that's true.
99% of psychiatrists don't believe DID exists. So therefore, 99% of the psychiatrists who people go to and they think they're going to have mental counseling, which they don't get. They just give them medication.
Yep.
And give a 10-minute suggestion and send them on their way. Then they don't even believe in the American Psychiatric Association's manual that you mentioned, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual for Mental Disorders. So they reject it. They reject established psychological treatment. They reject it.
Yep. It's the scientists that don't follow the science.
Exactly. And I've had grown children who thought their mother that had SRADID, when she switched or said something a little bit wild, they thought she was psychotic. And they said, one of them recently said to their mother, they said, there was 3 children and they all said, you need to belong in a mental institution and live there. That's what they told their own mother. Yeah. And these people said they were Christians. Can you imagine that? And so I said, I wasn't there, so I couldn't, but I would say to those children, I said, so you think your mother is psychotic, even though it is just simply a mental disorder from abuse as a child, and you should put her in a psychiatric hospital where psychiatrists would just give her medication. They would just ask her a few questions. In less than 10 minutes, she'll go to group therapy once or twice a day, which Dr. Richard Clough, who designed the term, and Dr. Colin Ross, one of the top experts on DID, who wrote the textbook on it, said group therapy is the worst thing for people with DID, and the children think that is going to help their mother. Well, so I said the people that are psychotic are the children, the adult children, and not the person with DID.
Well, they're certainly at least totally ignorant, which most of the populace is, about these things.
That's right.
Right. Now, one of the things that I wanted to get in, there's so many things I want to talk with you about, but one of the things I wanted to talk with you about, which you really brought up with that story, is how does one discern the difference between demonic demonization or demonic possession versus dissociation identity disorder?
Well, without being argumentative,
okay,
I reject the term demon possession.
Okay, I did say demonization. You notice?
Yeah, demonization. The Greek word is demonazomoi, and it simply means to be demonized.
Yes.
So Christians years ago, in the late 1800s and early 1900s, thought they would clarify demons attacking a Christian as demon oppression and demons attacking a non-Christian as possession. And that's made up. That's not biblical.
That's a Merrill F. Ungerism, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right. I wrote a book, Spiritual Warfare, Defeating the Forces of Darkness. And in it, I'm the only one in the 2,000 years of Christian history that delineates the 9 different type of attacks of demons.
Yes.
And which is demonazomoi, which means the attack of demons. So what can happen is this. Deliverance ministries often make a mistake for a person with SRADID. They have them renounce all of these things, and they say, I bind any demons and command them to manifest. None of them manifest. None of the demons manifest. Here's the reason. You can't get rid of the demons in a person with SRADID, as I did this week, unless that altered personality comes near the surface. The demon is attached. So you talk to the altar and say, what happened to you? So the abuse that happened to them, then either the altar, the host person, or me on their behalf, whatever is simpler for them, whatever they prefer to do, I renounce and reject what happened to them, claim it was nailed to the cross 2,000 years ago, covered by the blood of the Lamb and is null and void. I'll either bind the demon to say, I bind you by the blood of Jesus Christ, and I command you to leave and go to the feet of the righteous judge. People say, go to the feet of Jesus. I think it's more appropriate to go to the feet of the righteous judge. He is the judge.
Yes. Okay.
There's 304 names for God. Each one of them is significant.
Yes.
The good shepherd, each has a different job or role. So, or there's 9 orders of heavenly beings, BEINGS. Some people think I have an accent. I thought they had an accent.
You have a little bit of a Florida twang, don't you?
Yeah, I was in Canada speaking, and I was training these counselors in DID, and I said something, and I could tell all on their faces that they didn't understand me. And I said, how many of you think I have an accent? Raise your hand. And they all raised their hand.
Right.
And I said, I thought you were the ones with the accent. And they all laughed.
That's right. With their processes and their projects.
That's right. A.
That's right. You know how Canadian spells Canada, don't you?
How's that?
CANADA.
That's hilarious.
That's true.
So anyway, I will pray that God's army, the order of thrones in the Bible, will come and bind this demon and take it away to the feet of the righteous judge.
Amen.
And that makes it simpler, and that's their job.
Right.
The order of thrones is God's army that brings justice to earth. So then the demon is gone, and then I will ask Jesus, the great physician, to talk to the altar. And then I ask Jesus, the wonderful counselor, to talk to the altar. And then I pray and ask Jesus, the great physician, to heal their pain. And when all the pain is gone, I pray they're cleansed of any evil. And Jesus said, you have to fill that void. So right. I pray that they would be filled with the fruit and the power of the Holy Spirit. And then I pray that Christ would integrate them into the person to become one, as God the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit are one.
Right.
And they're integrated. They're gone into the person.
Let me ask this to kind of poke around some more on this issue of relationship between demonization and DID. The programmer, and I always think there's really sort of multiple kinds of programmers. There's the CIA programmers that are
That's
creating
right.
Manchurian candidates, and
Yeah,
then
MK Ultra.
yeah, kind of exactly. And then there's the what I call the rural in the woods Satan cult that programs typically children, and they do it a certain way. And then there's the programmers like Joseph Mengele and some of the more evil
The
ones.
Illuminati
Yeah,
type
in the
program.
Illuminati,
Yes.
exactly. So talk for a moment, if you would, about the nature of the programming where an altar is created or a domain full of altars is brought into a person, but then the programmer also calls demons in to infest, I guess, that domain or that person or
That's right.
series of identities. Talk a little bit about what that programming process is, if you would.
Yes. What happens is uh, a satanic cult, whatever level it is, and I say that there's 5 levels, but whatever level it is, they have an altar, usually a stone altar with a pentagram on there and a circle around the pentagram. The circle represents power. So they put the child, they tie the child or chain them, whatever, on the altar. Then they have each satanic cult really worships a different deity, not just Satanists. Even though they worship Satan, they usually have a different deity, like Beelzebub or any one of them,
something like that.
Yeah, there's the whole list
right.
of them.
All the old names.
Yeah, Apollyon, whatever.
Right.
So they have local deity. So they have to put the altar either to the north, east, west, or south. And that's called the 4 crowned princes of hell.
Wow.
The book of Revelation, it says the angels of the 4 corners of the earth. Doesn't it say that? So therefore, they're the 4 crowned princes of heaven: Michael, Raphael, Gabriel, and Uriel. And they are the archangels of the north, east, west, and south. They're like the 4
good guys.
They're the good guys. They're the 4 generals of God.
Okay.
In his hierarchy. So the 4 generals of hell, then they, whichever one of those 4 comes, they place the altar in that direction. Then they summon the specific deity that they call it for their locale that they worship. Anyway, they depending on the ritual, they usually wear black hooded gowns and they walk in a circle around the child. They have a circle of fire, and then they will chant, and they will chant depending on what spell or ritual they want to do. So they will chant and they summon. It's called demon calling rituals and revelations. So they summon demons to actually enter the child's body, and they cause pain from the inside. So the pain caused by the demons can actually cause dissociation and create altered personalities, shortened for alters. And then they will, after that is over with, they will send a specialist who's a programmer to program the child and program that specific altar, and that becomes what's called a cult altar, a satanic cult altar. It's just called a cult altar. So it's programmed to do things for the cult. I'll give you a perfect example. I'm counseling a woman, and the altar was programmed. The altar was basically sociopathic.
All right.
It had no conscience. It thought nothing of causing pain, and there can be created a cult altar to be a programmer inside.
Mm.
So there's internal programmers and external programmers.
Mm.
There's internal abusers and external abusers. So this cult altar specifically was an internal abuser, and it was a cult altar. And what they would do is when they had a certain type of a ring, that would be a sign from the cult. So this cult altar would come to the surface and answer the phone, and they would say, on Friday night at 11 o'clock, I want you to drive this body, this person, to a certain location, and we'll pick you up and take you to the ritual. So that would be a specific job of a cult altar.
Okay.
It could be one of 1,000 different things that a cult altar would be programmed to do.
But this could also be a reason why folks that are going through counseling, they don't always fully break free of the hold that these cults have on them. I suppose that there are these sort of personalities lying in wait to kind of keep them into the cult. Is that sort of true?
That's right. And oftentimes the programming is done in layers.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's like I was at a national conference for DID counselors, and I was sitting next to a woman who was a counselor there at the conference to learn. But I watched her switching, and I said, do you have DID? She says, no, I'm a counselor. And I said, do you have, I'm a stranger to her, even though I was one of the speakers.
Right.
And I said, do you have somebody? She says, I have 6 friends here. I said, I'll meet you in your hotel room with your 6 friends. So to make a long story short,
right.
She had SRA DID.
Mm.
I mean, so
deep.
So
was
she
had
had
a plant, or was she just seeking help and didn't know it?
No, she was seeking help and didn't know it. She was there as a counselor.
Yeah.
So she had 50 altars, and no more were apparent. And I said, we'll just wait a month and see what happens. Okay. A month later, she calls me. She says, they're back. So it was a new layer of altars.
It's like the nerds. They're back.
They're back, right?
Yeah, right.
So then it turned out this happened 4 times. So she had 4 layers of 50 altars each.
Goodness.
And she was married to some very bad people.
Yeah.
So she had been married 4 times. And
one
of them was a hitman.
Were they basically handlers? Were they serving as handlers of her?
They were basically handlers, but they were, let me give an example. One of them was a hitman for the mafia. One of them was
good job if you could get it, I guess.
In Hell's Angels.
Right.
But these people knew enough to be her handler.
Right.
And so she ended up being totally integrated. Okay. But she was like a brand new person.
Praise God. I know, it's just the power when someone is freed from these powers and their personality blossoms and so forth. It is not only is it a miracle, but it's got to be a great source of encouragement to you.
Oh, it is. I tell you what, even though I have been to three major seminaries,
Mhm.
And I was raised in a Christian family. My faith in the power of God has increased 1,000-fold,
Mhm.
counseling people with SRADID compared to everything else in my Christian life.
Yeah.
Because I see time after time the miracle working power of God. Where sin abounds, grace does much more abound.
Right.
And these people are very depressed. Most of them have suicidal ideation,
Mhm.
which is a serious problem. I mean, I counsel people that are suicidal every day.
Right.
They can't go to the hospital every day. That's totally impractical. And here's what happens. If a person with DID goes to the hospital, if they tell their doctor they're suicidal, the doctor would just send them to the hospital. Well, once they get to the hospital, what'll happen is after the first day, they switch. They switch to a happy-go-lucky personality. And the psychiatrist there says, well, the medicine must have worked.
Yeah.
It's a miracle. The medicine worked. The group therapy worked. And so they're great. And so they let them leave after one day.
Mm.
You know, they just switch personalities. These people are not stupid. The person with DID has an above average intelligence.
Ah,
So don't look down on them.
right.
But half of them are able to work, half are unable to work.
Mm. Yes. Yep. Some are fully functional and some are not.
That's right. And
Yep.
let me say, there are CEOs of national companies
Right.
that have DID, and they may speak before 1,000 people. And this woman is dressed to the hilt. She's very attractive. And then people think, oh my goodness, I would love for her to be my wife.
Mm.
And she runs this national organization. And when I counsel her, she turns into a 5-year-old child.
Oh gosh. Well, I was going to say, I used to be an executive with Microsoft, and I won't
Yes.
mention names, but most of the executives of Microsoft are names that people know. And I would say that I met a number of those altars from time to time.
Yes, right. Some can be good and some can be bad.
Dude, some were certainly bad. It was a crazy place to work. But anyway, let's get into some of the stories, some of the counseling. One of the things that we'll kind of get into the subject this way. One of the things that you have done probably more than anyone in terms of counseling over your several decades of work is counseled with those that are probably identified as Illuminists, as Illuminati. Talk, if you would, let's begin to talk about that. And, how did that process, how did you begin to talk with people that would say, well, I'm an Illuminati? And I wonder if you raised your eyebrows the first time you heard that.
Well, a person in the Illuminati,
Mm-hmm.
they're highly programmed. They're programmed by the best programmers in the world. And it may cost $100,000 for one programmer just to program a certain series of programs in this person. And they're going to have a series of programmers. So it may cost over $1 million to program this one person.
Mm.
But finally, the power of the Holy Spirit works in a person's life, and they accept Christ as Savior. And then they start hearing voices. So they want to find an answer to that. They want to find out what that is. They don't really know. So then they start seeking out counselors. So the average person with SRADID or Illuminati programming
Mm-hmm.
Go to 7 counselors before they find someone that can help them to some degree.
Right.
So what happens is it's only been the last year that I put up a website.
Okay.
which is spiritualwarfarecenter.com.
Yes, I did spend some time with it, and it's a nice website with very cogent information.
And I only put it up this last year, but I've been counseling people with SRADID longer than anyone in the world that I know of. And that's not exaggeration, because I know a lot of the DID counselors in the world.
Yes.
And it's like I've been all over England. I counsel through means like we're doing now, people in England, people in Germany, people in Australia, people in Slovakia, wherever that is.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. Maybe South Africa.
South Africa, people in South Africa, people in Scotland, all over the world.
It tends to be a Western civilization phenomenon, though, doesn't it?
That's correct.
Yeah. And what does that tell us about the history and where did this come from, and why is it in the Western civilization but not so much in the Eastern civilizations? What would you say to that?
Well, I would say the reason is because that's where the Illuminati families are.
Okay, that's where the bloodlines are.
That's where the bloodlines are. What the bloodlines are is the Illuminati is nothing but 13 bloodlines. They're of the Merovingian bloodline.
They're all.
These spiritual beings have been ruling this planet through very specific bloodlines who long ago swore allegiance to these beings in exchange for wealth and power over the human race. In preparing the whole world for the ultimate spiritual deception, these evil entities have planned. These bloodlines are literally able to be traced by genealogists all the way back to ancient Sumer and Babylonia. And these human familiars or pets of the demonic angels have worshipped Satan and his minions under many forms from the time of Sumer right up to our present day.
They're all of Merovingians. Okay.
And it's like my ancestry has been traced back to BC. I have a huge thick book in detail of copies of ancient letters and rubbings and things like that of my family tree. Wow. And I'm a Merovingian.
You are.
I'm related to the kings of 21 generations of the Franks, which is modern day France and Germany.
The Merovingians, was it Merovii? That was the first, whom the line is named after. And was he like in a sixth century or something like that? I'm trying to remember how far back.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
And it goes back very far. And just by happen chance, I studied French in school and Germany.
Something was telling you should.
So, yes, but I think God has a sense of humor, because here He made me I'm a soldier for Christ, right, instead of a soldier for Lucifer.
Yes.
So the 13 bloodlines that comes from the royal bloodline in England, but there is one bloodline in China.
No, there is. Okay.
The Li family in China is one of the 13 bloodlines of the Illuminati.
Okay.
And there's a number of them in America, in Europe, and France. I counsel people in France too. And Lord Rothschild in France is actually the head of the Rothschilds.
Yes.
But these people are very wicked. I call them sadistic, sexual deviant narcissist.
Yes.
If you want a psychological explanation for their behavior, but that's the way that they're programmed. So
talk
now
a bit about, if you would, the way that it sounds like programming is just part of their growing up.
It is. That's exactly correct.
Okay.
It's part of their childhood.
Yes.
They one day, an Illuminati assassin came to my office to assassinate me for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
I thought I was just sweet and lovable, but she came to kill me.
Yeah.
And that's a story in itself by the
Well,
miracle
yeah,
and the
and
power of God.
I'm going to make you tell it in a moment. Go ahead.
Okay. So when I started laughing at her, she never had that response to someone she was going to kill.
Okay. I bet.
So then she said, "Why are you laughing?" And she switched to a male voice.
Oh, okay.
"Why are you laughing at me?" And I told her what God had told me the night before. And so she said, then she switched back to herself. She says, "I've never met anybody like you." And she said, "I have to admit, I'm a programmed Illuminati assassin."
Okay.
She said, "My parents were in the Illuminati, my grandparents, my great-grandparents, going back for centuries."
Past Weishaupt.
Past Weishaupt, yes, exactly.
Right.
Sehr gut. So, and she said this, she said, "I was programmed from birth to be an assassin."
Wow.
She said, "I am the best assassin that the Illuminati has." She said, "I am so good, if the mafia fails in a hit, they will contract with me to carry out that hit."
My goodness. Well,
So
did you ask her if she wanted to be delivered from that?
well,
world?
well, first they've got to accept Christ.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I talked to her a majority of the time there. I talked to her about accepting Christ.
Okay. Did she start hissing or?
No. She listened very.
Okay. She didn't manifest some other spirit or whatever. Okay.
No, that's only in the movies.
Okay.
So
Makes for a good story, though.
yes, it does.
Yes, it does.
But they're programmed from birth to do whatever job. So let me give you a specific one of the Rothschild.
Yes.
Each of the 13 bloodlines carry out a different responsibility. Like one of the bloodlines is called the Illuminati among themselves. They have terms for things. And they call this family the Bloods, because they're the ones who mainly do the assassinations and the killings. And then the Rothschilds do the banking. So they have hundreds of trillions of dollars that they have acquired through the years. Right. So they have more money than most countries have.
Sure.
So they can pretty much control any country.
Including the United States.
Including the United States. Yes, the United States is actually in debt. In fact, what's interesting is the Federal Reserve is not part of the federal government.
Sure, it's not.
It is a private bank. And if you do a search on who owns the Federal Reserve, you'll see it is 10 Illuminati banks that own the Federal Reserve.
Absolutely.
That's a shocker.
Yeah. Well, for anyone, unless someone is like me, has read and studied, the history of the Illuminati, the history of the banksters, as they're often called, but it's absolutely amazing. So we'll keep going. Tell us a little bit more about some of your counseling sessions and what you've learned in talking with Illuminati.
So this one woman that's a Rothschild This was the first case I had years ago, probably 30 years ago. She was a Rothschild, and she had very sophisticated programming, very expensive. And the thing is, she rarely hears her alters, but they'll talk to me. And because I've studied science and quantum physics, she has a quantum physics alter that will talk to me.
Okay.
And this was just last week.
Okay.
The alter called me and said, I like talking to you because you understand me. I said, yes, I do. And so she said, what Lucifer, now see, the Illuminati worships Lucifer. They don't worship Satan.
Okay.
They call themselves Luciferians.
Right.
Satanists worship Satan, and they call themselves Satanists.
Right.
So it is an insult to call an Illuminati a Satanist.
Well, there are some that say that Lucifer really is not an appropriate biblically based name for the adversary, but it has been adopted by the people of the adversary as their friendly way of terming their leader, their fearless leader.
That's right. So they call him the enlightened one or something like that.
Yes.
But their focus is collecting knowledge. So therefore, they have some of the greatest scientists in the world. Now, your audience needs to listen to this statement.
All right.
Some of the greatest scientists in the world in different fields are members of the Illuminati. They were programmed from birth to do that job. Just remember, Dr. Joseph Mengele of Nazi Germany was trained by the #1 geneticist in the world. And when that geneticist died, the #1 genetic scientist in the world was Dr. Joseph Mengele. So he did genetic research on the 100,000 children that he worked with and programmed. I counseled a woman who, when she was a child, was on Epstein Island, Jeffrey Epstein.
Okay.
And here's what she told me.
All right.
She said that Jeffrey Epstein would hire some top geneticist in the world to go there and study genetics, and that she saw a series of jars at different levels of babies they aborted that he or his clients had gotten pregnant on the island, and they had an abortion. So he, for the Illuminati, would do genetic research. Now, what is this genetic research for? It's for mainly two things. Number one, to genetically develop an innate skill, a specific skill.
The person that Joseph Mengele did genetic research, was it von Verschuur that was his mentor? Is that who it was, though, that was programming him?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, they were both did researching around twins, and Mengele followed up in his footsteps about twinning and so forth.
That's right.
Now but what happened on the Epstein Island was other genetic researchers that would be brought there to kind of carry on in the same sort of line of research as Mengele.
That's correct. That's exactly correct. And that's what this woman said, who had lived there for a number of years until, as an adult, she could talk somebody into leaving with them on their plane.
Okay. When do you think she was there? From when to when do you think?
Like 28, 30 now. So
Okay. So
she
may have
was,
been 10 years ago or something like that.
yes.
Yeah. And she may have been there younger, of course.
She gave me the impression that she was a child.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's once again, Jeffrey Epstein's reach is just incredible. And the stories that we wish could be told to indict all of those that went there and participated in the sexual abuse of so many.
Yes. So anyway, those who doubt that people genetically can develop enhanced abilities, they need to remember just a few weeks ago, the Chinese military announced that they are developing genetically enhanced super soldiers for their army.
Wow. They actually announced that. Huh?
Announced it 2 weeks ago. Yes.
Okay. Well, we know from stories we've heard, and maybe stories from folks you counseled with, that the U.S. has had super soldiers of sorts for quite some time. But could you comment on that?
Well, I was going to say,
yes, go ahead.
China I know a lot more than what I'm saying, but China just announced it 2 weeks ago,
right.
But the United States has been doing genetic research for a long time.
Long
In fact,
time.
MK Ultra
Yeah.
means, it's German, mind control with a K.
Yeah.
Ultra means advanced mind control, and they've done it. They did it first with the people in the CIA, and all of this is public information.
Yeah.
Colin Ross has gathered 100,000 pages under the Freedom of Information Act of documentation of the CIA mind control of people. They even did it with children. They have horrible pictures of using drugs and other means of using mind control on children and even their own CIA agents.
Yeah. Well, that's right. And the research that I've done.
The American military were also experimenting with LSD as a potential weapon.
Here is a group of normal soldiers responding correctly to a series of routine drill commands. After receiving a small dose of LSD, they're confused and undisciplined.
The idea was to spray the drug on enemy troops. The dose, however, proved rather difficult to control.
The research that I've done and what I've written about is pertaining to the Manchurian Candidate in the CIA. Yes. A book was written by a fellow named John Marks that I think was published in like 1979, talking about the search for the Manchurian Candidate. And, in the book, he talks about Bowlby and John Gittinger and, a number of these different individuals. What's his name? That was, I want to say Joy, but that's not right. I can't think of his name, but he was one of the most famous. And, in their work, they were basically creating these super soldiers that could, basically on command, go out and assassinate someone. And they've been working on that since really the early 1950s, probably as early as 1947, 1948.
Yes.
From what I understand.
And medical centers connected to universities in Canada also worked with the CIA on mind control projects.
Well, yeah.
And this went on.
Cameron was, of course, a major contractor working in Montreal.
Yes, that's right. So the book's title, The Manchurian Candidate, is a little bit wrong. It should be The Manchurian Candidates with an S on the end.
Indeed.
Because
That's absolutely true. What I was starting to say was that he did not identify DID as the means that they utilized. I think it was hidden from him, or he wasn't allowed to talk about it. But they had talked about hypnotism. They had talked about LSD, various drugs, various ways that they were attempting to create the Manchurian Candidate, and none of those worked. None of those were reliable. But
they weren't reliable.
Yeah, as I said, but they discovered probably in the late 1970s, early 1980s, that this DID phenomenon was the proper way to create an assassin that had no will of their own, that would take orders perfectly and would have enhanced abilities to carry out what they had been asked to do.
That's right. And you remember I was talking about one cult alter that was sociopathic.
Yes.
They had no conscience. They would kill anybody or torture them or get a child to be picked up, and knowing that they would be sacrificed without a whim, without it bothering them at all.
Absolutely. Yes. Incredible. Incredible. Well, tell us some more, some of the more unusual encounters you've had. You told us about the assassin, the Illuminati assassin. I'm sure the audience is curious. I am too, but hopefully for the right reasons, not just to satisfy curiosity, but that we've learned more about the reality of the Illuminati, kind of where they are, how ingrained are they in the United States? How many Illuminists are at top levels in organizations in the government and so forth?
Okay. I was told a month ago by a very reliable Illuminati person that I'm counseling.
All right.
For years, she referred to top leaders in the Illuminati as being underground.
Okay.
That simply means they were not literally under the ground, under the dirt. It just means they were not visible. They had not taken their position that they had been programmed their whole life.
Okay.
And a month ago, she said, all of those that had been underground are now in their positions above ground. So no one is underground now.
Wow.
So that is probably the worst thing I have ever heard my whole life.
That's the worst news we could have.
The worst news possible. In the United States government, most of the leaders in various capacities in the federal government, that they are members of the Illuminati.
Yeah.
Most of the leaders in the different branches of government, of the military, are members of the Illuminati. I would say, except the Marines. Semper Fi.
Yeah. Were you a Marine? No. Well, I know there's. I'm trying to think of the lady that gave extensive interviews. You may recall, but her husband was in the Marines, and she disclosed a whole lot of things about the Marines and so forth. So in a way, that surprises me that they might not be controlled.
I said the leaders. That doesn't mean some of the officers,
right,
are not in the Illuminati, because they are.
Rules in the majors and so forth. Right.
That's right.
Right.
But for the time being, I don't know how much longer it'll be, but for the time being, it appears that the head of the Marines is not a member of the Illuminati, but a lot of the officers below him are.
Yeah. Well,
so
his days are numbered.
His days are numbers. But just remember, the people that are in charge of nuclear weapons. They're probably members of the Illuminati.
Yeah.
People in charge of submarines, people in charge of air launch cruise missiles.
Mm-hmm.
I have been in a nuclear missile silo
Okay.
with an Alchem missile. And I went into what they call the capsule, where the two men live, and they put in a key and turn it and send off the missile. When I left, they have a concrete pad covering the top of the missile, and me being a little bit daring,
Yes.
well, a lot daring, I went and stood on top of the concrete pad, and I prayed that they wouldn't have a missile go off
Just
while I
then.
was standing on it, because it would move. But just
Oh, my.
imagine,
Yeah.
many of the people in charge of different branches of the military and the US government, that means government agencies, are in the Illuminati. They've been programmed since birth to do their job. They will do it obsessively.
Yeah.
They will do it regardless of what the public thinks. And if there's ever been a time in history for Christians to make a stand and make sure the next election that you vote against these people that are in charge of causing all this chaos now, that is repressing the government, now is the time to make a stand.
Well, I would agree. I think let's talk about Donald Trump for a moment. You know, Trump, I don't know, I'll suspend the question of whether Trump's an Illuminist for a moment, but even if he wasn't, it certainly seems that his ability to influence what happens in various departments, whether it's the CIA, Department of State, Department of the Treasury, whatever, that he was fighting an uphill battle all the way. And but now tell us what you think regarding, how would we go about electing a new slate of individuals that can actually do something about this?
Well, I decided today,
okay,
that every email I send out, at the bottom, I'm going to say this: vote against every politician that ordered a quarantine in any level of government, because that is a small dose of the authoritarianism to come.
Yeah.
Because the Antichrist wants to
fully control,
totally control everybody. And now now is the time to vote against everybody that has ordered this quarantine. That means they don't care about our freedoms. The point is not the small death rate. The point is they are taking away our freedoms.
They're using it.
They're using it. I'm smart enough to know what I want to do. That I don't use Google at all, because they have taken away my freedom of a conservative Christian viewpoint.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Edmund Burke says, evil conquers when good men do nothing. An easy way to tell who to vote for is who are the liberal people on all the networks supporting, and vote the opposite candidate.
Yeah. It is a very simple litmus test. The fact that there are so many Illuminists at high levels, which has been an ongoing process, no doubt, for 200 years. But I guess the question is, what's your awareness of their interaction with one another? The giant conspiracy theory. It would seem logical that the Illuminati are organized. I've heard other interviews by other parties that have talked about Gloria Vanderbilt and different individuals that are responsible for different regions of the country and so forth. So based on your sort of inside baseball knowledge, how would you depict that sort of networking and top-down management of the Illuminati?
Well, for people who believe there's not a network in the Illuminati, then why do they have an annual meeting?
Called the Bilderberg Group?
No, it's not the Bilderberg Group.
Okay.
That is a sub Illuminati group. Yes.
I was visualizing the Venn diagram where they're almost perfectly overlaid.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah.
Actually, I think it was 3 years ago, about 45 minutes from where I live, is where they held the annual Illuminati meeting.
Okay.
And it was huge. And I will say
yes,
that one of the former presidents was there.
Okay.
But there is the Illuminati in the Democrats and the Republicans.
You're sure.
And all of the people in the Illuminati have an arranged marriage.
Oh gosh, that's interesting.
So regardless of an Illuminati president, and people say, oh, he's madly in love with his wife. Don't be fooled. It's an arranged marriage.
Right.
A number of years ago, both the Democrat and Republican candidate for president were both members of the Illuminati.
Yeah, I can pretty well guess who that might have been too.
And one of them, their family line is pretty wicked.
Yeah. Yep. Yes, I understand.
But so if
I got to ask though, let me interrupt. I got to ask. So that meeting, how did you know it was going on? What name was the meeting being held under? Like Future Farmers of America, or and
Christians United of America.
Yeah, there you go. The Christians United. Nikki Haley speaking. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I don't remember what the what they called it. It was some conference.
Right.
And the reason I knew is because one of the people I counseled went there.
Okay.
Her and her husband went there.
All right. They alerted you to that fact?
Oh, they alerted me. See, here's what happens.
Okay.
Some people in the Illuminati that have searched for years for someone to help them, someone to understand them. And they've gone to all of these nitwit counselors who don't understand DID at all.
Right.
When they come to me, I understand them. God has just given me that ability, and just through experience and just through letting the people with DID teach me things, then I have great recall. I have, at my house, I have 75,000 books. I've read every one of them. And
you read a couple of mine and said nice things about them too. Thank you.
Yes, you have some great books.
Thank you.
You're a great writer. But they know I understand them. And they know it because when they tell me something, they'll say, do you understand? And I will say it back to them, not parroting it, but in a way that they understand. And I give them a solution. What the devil does now is the advanced scientific technology they use on Earth. The devil now uses it in attacking Christians and attacking key people.
Okay.
So we need to pray for Christian leaders, if ever before, pray that will be a shield around us. It doesn't say what type of shield. So let me suggest that you pray this. Lord, I pray that you would put an electromagnetic shield around them to deflect any electronic attacks.
Right.
Now, what I'm referring to,
Faraday cage.
a Faraday cage around them. Yes.
Yeah.
I have some important things in Faraday cages so that they can't destroy it.
Yes.
But just the last 2 months, psychotronic weapons 3 times have been set off near the White House.
Wow.
This was in the news.
I
Nobody
thought,
nobody in the Illuminati told me this. I read it in the news.
wow.
I was shocked that they would put it in public. 3 times the last 2 months from a satellite, a psychotronic weapon. And if anybody wants to know in detail about a psychotronic weapon, about 10 years ago, I did a conference on it. They can go to Dr. Preston Bailey in a search engine other than Google, Dr. Preston Bailey, comma, psychotronic weapons.
Okay.
Psychotronic, psycho means the mind, and tronic is electronic. Electronic weapons that affect the mind for mind control, and it also affects the body. So it said it was 3 different times, and it's 3 different articles. And then the 3rd article said 3 times the last 2 months, psychotronic weapons have been discovered, that they were fired near the White House. Isn't that interesting?
Well, it is, especially given the fact that our president has a hard time putting thoughts together already.
Exactly. So it
It's not
doesn't
like it's not like he needed extra problems.
he didn't need a little extra bump. But 2 years ago in Cuba, the U.S. has had advanced talks with Cuba. So
Right.
they built a new U.S. embassy. While they were there, 17 embassy employees complained about injury to their head,
Yep.
to their hearing, etc., to their bodies.
That's in mainline news as well.
That was in the mainland news. And so a group of physicists, some of the top physicists in the United States, studied it for 9 months. And here's their conclusion. Their conclusion is that it was psychotronic weapons that were aimed at the U.S. embassy that injured the 17 employees.
Right.
Now that's the danger. So the devil today is using electronic things. So normal spiritual warfare prayers do not work.
Mm.
So we need to upgrade our prayers.
Mm-hmm.
And
When you say they do not work, would it? I'm cautious. Would it be more?
I said normal spiritual.
Okay. I was going to say, or may not work without a booster shot.
The booster shot is to pray
Yeah.
against electronic things, pray against directed energy.
Yeah.
Because
That's
what
the world we live in. That's the world we live in now.
And the devil is creating electrical beings to attack Christians. I'm counseling some now. That every warfare prayer,
I'm sorry, I have to lighten the load a little bit here. Go ahead.
We pray every kind of warfare, spiritual warfare prayer. It has no effect. It is something of electronic nature.
Wow.
That is attacking her. And that's happening more and more.
All right. So are you seeing the prayers have effect?
normal prayers don't have effect. So you have to pray in a scientific way.
Okay.
My email is Newton3law
Yeah.
at AOL.com.
Yep.
Because Sir Isaac Newton wrote more books about theology than he did about science. And he's the father of modern science.
That's true.
So we need to pray in a scientific way,
Okay.
because the devil is using more scientific things. For example, the number of angels that God has is more than the fallen angels that Satan has.
Yes.
And so he outnumbers them 2 to 1.
Mhm.
So Satan is trying to create beings that will fill that gap, if you understand what I'm saying.
This is not just Russ Dizdar Satanic Super Soldiers.
That's right. It's
beyond,
it's
beyond
that.
Okay.
It's beyond that.
All right.
Well, he's already created, even though it's not in the news, android type beings with artificial intelligence, with a skin that looks just like your skin and mine, and you cannot tell that they are not a human being.
It's like the TV show Westworld.
It's like Westworld, exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
So they put these, call it what you want to, android AI creations.
Synthetics.
Synthetics.
Yes, I heard that name. What program was I watching last night?
Synthetics.
They were talking about synthetics. Oh,
X-Files.
I know. It was Picard. It was the new Picard.
New Picard. Okay.
New Picard. Yes. The synthetics set fire to Mars, and so the government outlawed synthetics. Okay.
Yeah. So they're really synthetics.
Okay. Yes.
And so they are in certain positions right now.
Wow. And
nobody knows they're not human.
Well, the Doug Riggs, who we both know and appreciate and call friend, he talks about hybrid beings, which would be probably the incursion of additional, fallen angels having offspring with human women. Is that part of the story too, do you think?
Well, I hate to scare the general public.
Yes.
Because when I do research, I go to extreme. I mean, I can quote all of the, I read books just on one subject.
You dig deep.
I dig deep. Unfortunately, there are Nephilim that look like humans.
Yeah.
In fact, one woman I counsel, the Illuminati actually came in and rebuilt her basement. And in the walls of the basement, they put something like a heater. It's really like an incubator,
okay,
a giant incubator for babies. And they put it all in the basement.
All right.
And right after Nephilim mature.
Yeah, okay.
Doug, I believe, talked about it in your last program.
Yes.
Right after they matured, they would come to her house, and for about 2 or 3 weeks, they would stay in the basement, and these incubator type heaters would help their body assimilate into our atmosphere, I guess you could say.
Okay. Okay.
So, but they looked like anybody else.
Yeah.
The only way you could tell is if you did a blood test on them.
What would you learn? They have a triple helix DNA?
They have a triple helix DNA, yes.
Oh my gosh. It's amazing, isn't it? All these things that were rumored that you and I were reading about 10, 15, 20 years ago that were rumored, they all seem to be coming to pass.
a lot of the things from X-Files
Right.
have actually become true now.
Chris Carter was read in, wasn't he?
Yes. So people ask me, well, what about these movies? And what about the Illuminati finding out?
Mhm.
Well, here's what's happened. The Illuminati helps write some of these movies
Yeah, got to be.
because they now have the attitude. They said Christians have been powerless against us because they're too busy infighting.
Yeah.
I mean, just like among Baptists, there's 200 Baptist denominations. And since 1980, Christianity is declining in America. So now pastors just want to say, well, let's just love everybody and forgive everybody. And they forget totally the Christian soldier.
Absolutely.
They forget that God is the righteous judge and is angry at the wicked every day.
Indeed.
They forget that Jesus said in Matthew 18:1-7, that if you abuse a child, you deserve to have a 200-pound millstone wrapped around your neck and dropped into the Mariana Trench, which is the deepest part of the ocean. And when you go 100 feet below, your body will implode into 1,000 pieces, and the little fishes will come along and eat the remains.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You don't hear a sermon on that.
No, you sure don't. But it sure says it. Jesus said it.
Even though 1 in 4 children are abused, you don't hear a sermon on that hardly at all.
No, and that is a number I've heard before, what you quoted earlier by the FBI. Yeah, it's it is what a mess, Christians find themselves in at this point in time. And it really is a remnant. I mean, there's, in terms of who's aware, in terms of who can play a role, it is a remnant, and it is only a remnant, I'm afraid. But God always has a remnant.
That is true. And I tell my wife every day, she's probably sick of hearing, but I literally do it every day. I don't tell her all the horror stories because she doesn't want to hear it.
Yeah, my wife the same. Right. Yep.
I say the world is wicked and the world is stupid.
Yeah, both.
Wicked because the worst imaginable things happen. And I can't tell her what happened that day because she doesn't want to hear it.
Yep.
And I don't tell my sons because they think I'm crazy already.
My family is very similar to yours.
And in fact, last week I told my sons, I said, look, I talked about you on the radio last week, and I told them that you think I'm crazy.
Yeah.
And so they laughed.
Yeah.
As I said, but the second thing is I tell her people are stupid. That means they make unwise decisions.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, Christians are not standing up, and they're following the herd now.
Oh, yeah.
Of what the government wants. Look at the book of Judges. The whole book of Judges. God prepared people from birth to attack the leaders in government.
Yeah, I guess that's right. I hadn't thought of that. Yeah.
Read it in. I encourage every Christian to read the book of Judges again. Even Deborah.
Yeah. Yeah.
The king, she got a nail from the tent.
Yeah.
And drove it right through his head.
Yep.
Hey.
Colorful story.
Now I know why France for years had the guillotine.
Try to eliminate all of the eliminators.
They got rid of these evil government leaders that they had.
Yeah, that's true. Let them eat cake.
Let them eat cake. That's right.
The most sympathetic statement that you've heard.
Yeah, so I'm not the lovey-dovey kind of a person, in case you
I hear you. But obviously we know what evil is, and we know when there is no sympathy, no empathy in the heart of that person. Oh my. Well, let's talk about one last subject, because I bet you have an opinion. Let's talk about UFO disclosure. And that may seem, kind of off the wall, but knowing, you have a mind a little bit like mine, a lot smarter than mine, but still we kind of think about some of the same things. You've got to be impressed with what's been happening the last 6 to 12 months. And that's got to play into end days as well. But what are your thoughts on the current governmental sort of soft disclosure that's going on?
Well, I've seen unidentified flying objects, if that's what you want to call it.
Yeah.
I
call it
remember
a new name, but UAP or something.
Call it whatever you want to, but I remember when I was in the 5th grade on the playground, there was a flying cigar-shaped object, and it was so close to the ground I could see the rivets in the metal airship, whatever it was.
How large would you say it was?
It was probably about half the size of a football field.
So it was enormous. Okay.
It was enormous.
Hard to miss that.
Yes. So, I was just walking along as a kid in the 5th grade, and I remember a lot what went on in the 5th grade. In the 5th grade, I won the contest for reading the most books in the whole school from grade 1 to 12.
You started young, didn't you?
Yes. So anyway, it was cigar shaped, and it hovered there. It seemed like forever, but it was probably 30 seconds. And then it just took off so fast, it almost just disappeared. So
anybody see it with you?
A lot of, there were hundreds of kids out there, and many of them looked up, but nobody really said anything. In those days, they didn't say anything. But
yeah.
So the question is, what is that?
Sure.
We know for certain that demonic entities can appear in any form they want to.
Right.
So I think many of them are demonic entities. But I've followed very carefully the Nazis who went to New Schwabenland in Antarctica, and years ago in Switzerland, who found at a garage sale an old Nazi, the old reel to reel, and it was in German. So the man in Switzerland, his friend, turned it into an MPG file.
So they took an old reel-to-reel tape from an old computer and they turned it into an MPG file. Okay.
Yes, he was very technological, the guy in Switzerland.
All right.
And so my friend sent it to me, and I watched it. And here's what it was. It was in German, but I learned German in school, so I understood it.
That helps.
And it showed clearly a huge underground military base in Antarctica. It was huge. The biggest airplane America has could easily fit in there, and still have room for many others.
Right.
It showed, it had U-boats then, we would say submarines today.
Right.
It had many places to dock submarines.
Right.
It looked just like a modern submarine port. In Operation High Jump, when Admiral Byrd went on a quote unquote military exercise in Antarctica,
right,
they could have easily gone to Alaska. So that was baloney.
Mm-hmm.
They were trying to go to New Schwabland, and I believe that base after the war still had hundreds, if not more, Germans there.
Right.
And I believe that they developed the plans towards the last year of the war. I believe they developed flying saucers.
Right.
I have seen a video of 5 black flying saucers coming out of the water and attacking the warships of Admiral Byrd.
Mm.
One of the destroyers with a laser type beam, it cut it in half
Goodness sakes.
and it sunk it right there in Antarctica in the waters.
Wow.
But they were able to rescue all of the men.
Which is amazing, because
Which
that
is
water's
amazing.
pretty cold.
It is, and you only have
3 or 4 minutes, really.
4 minutes, really.
Wow. Yeah.
But they were all rescued, and so I think that is based on numerous reports that a lot of the flying saucers may be technology from New Schwabland, from Nazis.
Right.
And so I believe that
Yeah.
I believe the Nazis are still there.
Yeah. Okay. I was going to say, I certainly believe that in the 1950s, maybe even Roswell in 47, that all could have been the Nazis showing off, especially since they were flying right in front of von Braun. I think von Braun was operating in New Mexico at the time, and it was almost like mooning them, to be a little bit rude.
That's right. Yeah. And I tell people, I go, the most dangerous Nazi in Nazi Germany, Werner von Braun, that's the title he had.
Yep.
2 years later, he's in the United States and he's the director of NASA. Actually, the family of Hitler came to the United States, about a dozen of them. They changed their name and they live in New England.
Yes.
They all decided not to have children here in the United States. So I say that explains 2 of the flying phenomenon.
Yeah.
Do I believe that there is life on other planets? I believe in the multiverse,
Okay.
that there's many universes. And so I believe it's possible. I've talked to people in the Illuminati about it.
Okay.
And here's what they tell me.
Love to hear. I'm all ears. Right there. All ears. Okay, go ahead.
They say that there are 13 dimensions, that there are interdimensional beings. I say, well, what is an interdimensional being?
Mhm.
They said one of them is Bigfoot.
I've heard certain eschatology teachers that I won't quote that have said the same thing. They wouldn't want me to disclose that they think that.
Yeah, but I'm just telling you what
they said.
And everything this person has said in the past has been accurate. So I think that they're either flying devices from
Another dimension.
From another dimension,
Mhm.
or from other planets. But this woman said the way they get here is not by just flying for 100 years.
Right.
That there's a portal on this side and a portal on the other side.
It's like a
It is
Stargate.
just like the movie Stargate.
Yeah, exactly.
And then there is a black hole. And when they get close to the portal, outside just around the portal,
Mhm.
on the other side of where they are, is called the event horizon.
Yeah.
The event horizon pulls them through the black hole, and
they
where
pop
they're
out.
going,
Yep.
there's a portal, and they come through that, and it's almost instantaneous.
Yeah. anywhere else in the universe, wherever they are, or
anywhere in the universe,
or
wherever they are.
multiverse.
In the multiverse, yes.
Well, two other thoughts on types of craft. One, I believe, is just American technology that's learned from all these things, reverse engineered, the skunk
That's
works,
right.
out in Area 51 and all that. So we have a history of not wanting to release or make public, aerodynes or other types of flying craft until we need them from a
And a top CIA agent told me that
Okay.
that's what Area 51 is.
Yeah.
It develops the latest technology.
Yes.
That's
Now
done there.
Now the other type of we'll call them an unidentified object. I believe, based upon my research, is manifested by a human that is psychic some way and is seeking to create some sort of entity. And whether you call them, the Foo Fighters or whatever, they tend to pop up and they tend to be little balls of light or something like that.
That's right.
And that appears to be something that you can almost go back to fairy circles 500 years ago and some of the things that were going on there with leprechauns and all that. And you had all kinds of strange phenomenon like that all the way back then.
Well, I didn't mention it, I'm limited in what I said. I failed to mention that.
I'm coaxing you into it.
Yeah, you are, and you're doing quite well at that. The Illuminati has some type of device that they can project a person anywhere in the world, and it looks like they're there.
Like a hologram, basically.
It's like a hologram, but it's an advanced type of hologram.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They even have devices attached to satellites to experiment. It has been recorded, photographed, complete cities in the sky. And if people look on YouTube, they can find them.
How would they search for that on YouTube?
They would look for a city in the sky in China.
City in the sky in China. Sounds like Shangri-La.
Well, if you saw the picture, it's not trickery.
Mm-hmm.
You would see that looks like a real city in the sky.
Okay.
It didn't last very long, but somebody just took an excellent picture of it. It's been in several locations, but that's just the one I can think of right now that they can easily access. Anyway, they can make any flying object they want to in the sky. And notice they can follow any plane,
mm-hmm.
and suddenly it disappears.
Yeah.
That is this holographic.
The plane does, or the object following?
The object following the plane does.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes. So and they use this, what they do is, it's for two main purposes. Number one is they use this to transport the image of a person to someone with SRADID that's highly programmed, and the person has a database inside of them. They don't want to keep it in a computer because it can be hacked. So they keep the database inside of a person, and it's attached to an altar. And the altar has a phenomenal memory.
Kathy O'Brien, I think, tells the story of her being used in that way, that Kissinger used her in that way. I don't know if you'd heard that too, but I had heard that, I think, from, it was Kathy O'Brien, who's a fairly well-known.
Yes, I'm familiar with
it. Yes.
So they send this advanced hologram image that looks like a real person that is designed to trigger the specific altar to
Okay.
open the doorway so they can come and access the information.
Mm.
Some people are designed because they can analyze information, like analyze economic information, like for the Illuminati,
Mhm.
or analyze economic information for a country. And so these people are good at analyzing. So an altar analyzes it. It drops it off, and so that it's analyzed. And then the hologram comes and picks up the information. But this picture, this hologram of a specific person triggers a specific altar, so they'll open the doorway so they can pick up the evaluation of that information.
Wow. That goes past anything the Jetsons did.
Yeah, that's right. So then they can. So then the second thing is they're experimenting with objects in the sky, like spacecraft and things like that,
Mhm.
so that they can have a fake Jesus
Mm.
appear in the sky as if he is returning.
Now that was Project, I want to say it's not Project Blue Book, but there was another
Project Bluebeam.
Blue Beam. That's it. Yes. Yeah. We've heard that for a while. So if you heard that recently from someone.
Well, it's more advanced now.
Okay.
You see, they're always advancing it, but now they've got it to just exactly where they want it.
Goodness. All right.
But that's just one of thousands
There's
of projects that
well,
they
we have to talk. We have to do this again. More things to talk about. One last kind of cleanup question, which is just why is the government right now doing this soft disclosure on UFOs or UAPs as they call them? You have a thought on that?
They're going to use this Operation Bluebeam
Mm-hmm.
to. Some people are saying an alien is going to appear in the sky.
Yeah.
And they have satellites to appear, and it's supposed to be heard. They now have it tuned up so that you can see it three-dimensional,
Mm-hmm.
but you can also hear it in your own language.
Oh wow.
So people in Russia can hear it speaking
Mm-hmm.
in Russian.
Mm-hmm.
People in Germany can hear it in Germany. People in the Middle East can hear it in their own language. And so now it's advanced so that this alien creature
Or Antichrist.
or Antichrist,
Right.
I was going to say,
Yes.
people say alien, I would lean
Yeah.
more.
Yeah.
It's really the Antichrist,
Indeed.
however it appears.
Right.
And he will come and people will think he is God and he's great. And
Well, I was going to say, it sounds like that this technology will be the number one technology used by the false prophet.
that's right.
Yeah.
And they already have technology that can control the mind. Now, this is a U.S. patent, what I'm about to say,
Oh
in
gosh.
case
Okay.
you think I'm crazy.
All right.
This is a
Oh, I
U.S.
don't.
patent.
Go ahead. Yeah.
There is a psychotronic weapon attached to a satellite that can beam to a person's mind, and based on the speed and amplitude of the brain waves of a person, and there's a computer 1,000 miles away connected to that satellite, they can simultaneously type on the computer what you're thinking.
Oh gosh.
And that is a U.S. patent.
Oh my. Oh my. Well, that of course is frightening. It goes beyond, I think, what most of us are are able to able to live with. That's what I mean to say.
And so mind control
Mhm.
is now extremely advanced. That's why everybody in the Illuminati from the underground is now in their position ready for the Antichrist.
Yeah.
The Antichrist is alive.
Yep.
He's not coming from the United States, so Americans don't need to worry. They tend to be
Oh,
American.
shucks. That's one of my theories. Oh, shucks.
Yeah, shucks.
Well, of course, the last videos that we've done with Doug Riggs and the counselees that he works with suggest that the Antichrist is and the false prophet are both hybrids, and that
He is a hybrid. Yes, he is a hybrid.
They are alive, they are living, and they are ready to be revealed.
That is correct. What is interesting is,
yes,
I saw a news article, and when the United States Army invaded Iraq,
mm-hmm.
they sent a special team in, and they found the tomb of Nimrod.
Right.
They gathered the whole thing, put it on a cargo plane, and shipped it in the United States for some strange reason.
Yes, I know. I think
of all the things for the U.S. Army
go
that in 7 days invaded a country and defeated the enemy, the last thing you would want to do is go look for the tomb of someone dead for thousands of years.
Yes, that one boggles the mind for sure. But I've heard that before. I think even Peter Goodgame wrote about that in his book, The Second Coming of the Antichrist. And
Yes.
of course, the concept of Nimrod being both the first prototype archetype and then the having a relationship with the Antichrist in the last days. That's a theory that a lot of us have, of course.
Yes, and at a ritual that's approximately every 29 years is called the Feast of the Beast.
Yeah.
Satan comes in the form of a Baphomet.
Mm-hmm.
He is part goat and part Nimrod.
Oh, wow. That I did not know. I knew about the goat. I knew about what I always called Baphomet. But since you're French, you say Baphomet.
Yes, Baphomet is what Americans say. But it's really Baphomet.
Yeah.
Jean Deliveux Secret Bleu. And it is a hybrid. It's a chimera.
Yeah.
And so that's what the Antichrist will be.
He will be a chimera. He won't necessarily have horns.
He won't have goat's feet and he won't have horns.
Right.
He will be composed of other things.
Yes.
But he will be a chimera, a hybrid. Yes.
Well, okay. We'll leave it there. Folks, I'm sure you've heard nothing new today that you didn't already know. And of course, I'm jesting. This has been a great time with someone who is brilliant. His IQ is off the charts, and of course he has read a zillion books. So he really understands a lot about things from all kinds of domains. And so we had a great time. He was you're a good sport, Preston. Let us go into some of these areas with you, and I'm sure this will generate lots of questions. So if Preston is willing to sit on the hot seat again, we'll get back with him in a few weeks, provided that we're not already in the air.
Well, things are moving very quickly here.
Time is very short. So, well, anyway, thank you so much, Dr. Preston. We appreciate all that you do, and that you have some inside information that those of us that follow these kinds of subjects really appreciate, because it encourages us, and it kind of helps validate that some of these crazy notions that we've had for many, many years, that they're just true. They're just true. So
let me just say something in closing, very short.
Go ahead. Please go right ahead.
Number one, fear nothing or no one. And number two, nothing with God is impossible.
Indeed. Indeed.
Every day I wake up and I say, God, I thank you that nothing with you is impossible. And I'm reporting for duty as a Christian soldier marching as to war.
I love that. No, that's put on your helmet of salvation and, put on the armor. And we got to go to war, folks, however God wishes to use us. Because, as the song says, he's got the whole world in his hands, and he's especially got us in his hands. So
Right.
we need to dedicate ourselves to being used by him, however we can be used. And so let's say those prayers daily. Let's find ways to help bring in the kingdom, help bring the church to a point where it is a spotless, it's in white, and it's without wrinkle, if you will. So
Amen.
yeah, all right. So Preston, God bless you. May the Lord be with you, keep you safe, and we'll talk to you again really, really soon, I hope.
God bless you, Doug.
Thank
It
you.
was a pleasure talking with you.
Thank you so much. And to the audience, goodbye. We will get together again. I've got another great guest lined up that is in kind of the same vein as what we've talked about the last 3 shows. So I know you're going to want to listen into that as well. All right. So for now, goodbye. All right.
All right.
Thank you, sir. Well, that was kind of fun, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
You can see I have to smile a lot because it's like, this is so serious. If I don't poke fun at least myself, I don't know how I can take this.
I
Gosh,
laugh. My wife says it's better to laugh than to cry. So
that's true.
I just take it easy. I don't
Yeah.
get stressed out. So
In some ways, you got to have a sense of humor about this. It's just so remarkable that the enemy is going to these links, and it's tragic, of course, because of all the pain and suffering that he's incurring or causing and will continue to. But the Lord will glorify all of these people that have gone through all of this trauma. He will.
it's getting worse.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? So
There's some sociopaths in the Illuminati that are extremely violent.
yeah.
The most violent person you can think of, double it.
Yeah. I know.
And they wear a suit.
Yeah, I bet they do wear a suit. So, all right, brother. Well, I will let you go. Thanks again for being game for me. I appreciate that.
It was good. This, I think, was the best interview I had because you're so intelligent.
Oh, well, I appreciate it.
I don't say that lightly.
No, I think I'm gonna clip that out and put that somewhere back in the show that you said that.
I did counsel someone from Microsoft.
Did you? Yeah.
I'll say that.
Well, I know the HR person told me once that you wouldn't believe the percentage of people at Microsoft that are on some form of antidepressant.
Yeah.
Stress is so high. So,
That's right.
So, okay. Well,
okay.
I'll let you go.
Okay. God bless you.
Together again. Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.